Have you ever felt invisible, like the world is looking right through you, even though you're still showing up every day? I'm Dee Dee Sung, and if that's you, stay with me, because we're going to talk about why this happens in midlife and what it really takes to feel visible again. I know that feeling all too well, that quiet sense of disappearing, even while still showing up for everyone else. You see, there's a quiet moment many women in midlife come to recognize. It isn't loud, it doesn't happen all at once. It's the slow, subtle feeling of becoming less visible. You start to notice how your thoughts land but aren't always heard, how conversations move on even when you have more to say. And sometimes, without even realizing it, you stop really seeing yourself. You catch your reflection and think, when did I start to lose sight of who I am? Let me tell you when I first noticed this in myself. I notice it shows up when I'm in a group conversation, maybe with colleagues or friends who are a little younger, and rather than bring forward my perspective, my wisdom, or experience, I can find myself holding back, listening more than speaking, and it's not because I don't have something to say, but because a small part of me questions whether it will land, especially when I'm not completely sure of myself in that moment. There's this subtle flicker of self-consciousness where I minimize what I bring to the table. And now when I notice it happening, I do my best to choose differently, to stay curious, to ask questions, to remember that openness invites connection. And when I stop holding back, when I let myself be part of the conversation, not just watching it, something starts to shift. I stop worrying about being the most informed voice in the room, and instead I show up as myself, present, engaged, and confident that what I have to offer still matters. And I get it. I know it's a small choice, but it reminds me that visibility isn't about speaking louder. It's about showing up as yourself. And here's what I've come to understand. You haven't faded at all. The people around you may have stopped really noticing, but not out of disregard, but because they've grown so used to your steadiness. And now it's time you started seeing yourself again. And what you're feeling isn't a shortcoming on your part. It's the quiet echo of a culture that often forgets to value women beyond appearance and achievement. And some of that feeling, well, it isn't personal at all. It's the messaging we've been surrounded by for decades. A world that celebrates beginnings, but doesn't quite know what to do with women in their middle chapters. We're told to stay young, stay busy, and stay relevant, as if our wisdom needs to be disguised to be welcomed. But the version of midlife we've been handed isn't the only one. It's just the one that's been most visible. It's a quiet kind of ageism that teaches us to shrink, even when we still have so much to offer. And without realizing it, we start to internalize those messages, measuring ourselves by standards that were never made for us in the first place. So it's no wonder we sometimes overlook the depth and wisdom that life after 50, and especially after 60, really holds. And while that sense of invisibility might feel real, it doesn't have to, nor should it be your reality. And that reclaiming, it starts right here in this moment with you. And if this is landing for you, stay with me, because what we're building here is a community of women who refuse to disappear from their own lives. You see, reclaiming your place doesn't mean fighting for attention. It means remembering that your presence carries weight, that you have a right to take up space in your own story. Because that sense of invisibility, well, it builds quietly over time. It takes shape in the small moments, the times you hold back your opinions or let your needs slide to the bottom of the list. And that's often when it starts to dawn on us how easily we can disappear from our own lives. It can take you by surprise the moment you realize you've been showing up for everyone else, but somehow not as much for yourself. You've worn so many roles for so long: mother, daughter, colleague, partner, caretaker, friend, and yet even with all that showing up, you start to feel unseen. And if you've ever started to doubt, well, what made you, you, hasn't disappeared. It's that the culture around us has learned to overlook what doesn't shout for attention, and we've learned to go unnoticed instead of being seen. But what you hold now runs deeper. It's experience, it's perspective, and steady strength. And when you start to notice that pattern of how easily women in midlife see their contributions minimized or overlooked, you begin to see that feeling invisible was never meant to be personal. It was learned, and it can be unlearned. And here's what that means to you. You see, the simple act of noticing it, naming what's really happening, is how you start to shift that pattern. And that's where visibility begins. Not with what others see, but with what you choose to see in yourself. Now, I want to pause here with you for a moment to notice where this might be showing up in your own life. Maybe it's a situation where you've stayed quiet when you wanted to speak up, or a time when you've downplayed what you know just to keep the peace. You don't have to change anything right now, just notice it. Notice how often you make yourself smaller to keep things smooth. And then notice how it feels when you imagine doing it differently, more intentional, more fully present. And that simple awareness is where everything starts to change, because you can't reclaim what you don't first acknowledge. And once you do, you can start noticing how this awareness shows up in everyday life, in the small moments you might have missed before. You see, there's power in pausing long enough to notice what's really happening beneath the surface. Maybe there's a part of your life where you've started to hold back, not because you don't care, but because sometimes it feels easier to stay quiet. Or maybe it's simpler than that. You've been showing up for everyone else and haven't paused to consider what you need and what matters most to you now. Remember, you don't have to fix it all today, nor could you. Awareness alone begins to shift the way you see yourself, and when you can recognize what you've quietly set aside, you can start to bring it forward. And that's the beginning of becoming visible again, not through effort or performance, but through the deliberate choice to see yourself clearly. And from that place, the way forward begins to come into view. And that awareness becomes your starting point, the quiet shift that begins to shape your next choices and the way you show up in your everyday life. Awareness opens the door, and what comes next is where the real shift happens. In the moments you begin to see yourself more clearly, you reconnect with your sense of agency. And it doesn't happen all at once. It builds through small, steady moments, the ones that often go unnoticed, the ones that quietly rebuild your confidence. Maybe it's speaking up in that meeting when you usually stay quiet. Maybe it's asking for help instead of pushing through on your own, or even pausing to recognize the strength it took to get here. Those moments, they add up. And that's how visibility grows. Choice by choice, moment by moment. And when you start showing up from that place, something inside you steadies. It may even feel like people respond differently, and more importantly, you do. You begin to feel grounded again, not waiting to be seen, but living from a place of self-recognition. That's what it means to follow your lighthouse, to live guided by clarity, not comparison, because your worth was never meant to be proven, only remembered. And maybe that's the invitation of this season of life, to stop trying to live up to everyone else's expectations and start shaping your own for who you are now. And every time you do, you bring yourself a little more fully into view. You see, when you start showing up with that kind of grounded clarity, something begins to move inside you, quietly at first, then with growing momentum. The same self-awareness that helps you see yourself again becomes the compass that guides you forward with intention. Because once you start reconnecting with your own sense of self-worth, you start asking different questions, not just, who am I now, but where am I being called to go from here? And that's where we're exploring next. But first, let's take a breath and recognize what we've just covered together. In this video, we've talked about what it means to come back into focus, to recognize where you are now and reconnect with your sense of self-trust. Because once you begin to feel that connection again, you naturally start to look ahead, to ask new kinds of questions. What do I want this next chapter to stand for? Or who am I becoming as I step into it? Those questions point straight toward purpose. And once you start recognizing who you've always been, the next step is finding a sense of purpose that truly fits who and where you are now. And that's what we'll explore in the next video. Now, as you sit with these questions, remember, they're not here to pressure you. They're here to create breathing room. They're an opening and a reminder that your story isn't over just because a chapter has closed. You've begun to see yourself more clearly, to trust your direction and to move through the world with intention. And that clarity naturally points you forward toward defining what you want this next chapter to mean for you. We'll go deeper into that in the next video in what is purpose in midlife and how do you find it? Because visibility without purpose can feel empty, and that's exactly where we're going next. Be sure to watch. It builds directly on what we've just explored. And if this conversation resonated with you, leave a comment below and share what stood out most. And if you found this helpful, give it a like. It helps more women find Follow Your Lighthouse and join the conversation. So thank you for being here and for choosing to see yourself clearly again. Remember, you're not fading. You're coming back into view. Take care, and I will see you soon.